has the incentive to focus just on one outcome. Why would anyone think that the private sector can offer anything to improve education generally? I don't understand. Merit pay. To understand more fully why a reasonable sounding approach like outcomes-based education or output-based assistance is doomed to fail, it is useful to understand why even more limited approaches, which have tried simply to relate one input to one output, have not been successful. The major attempt of this kind is merit pay for teachers or schools, pushed in the U.S. in the mid-1980s, and coming back again in recent years as part of the standardized testing movement. Most of these innovations have been tried in the past, as new generations forget or ignore the lessons of the past. Merit pay, as I was saying, for teachers was part of the U.S. school reform movement in the early 1900s. It was part of the British reform movement in the 1860s. Under merit pay, teachers get a salary increase based, at least in part, on student output, almost always measured by scores or achievement tests. There's been a lot of resistance to this. The proponents blame this on the resistance of teacher unions, but the real problem is that the type of merit pay programs usually proposed make no sense from a rational evaluation standpoint, and the results are harmful to teachers and students alike. From an economic standpoint, merit pay for teacher programs are inequitable and inefficient. The fundamental problem, which you've heard before, but I want to say it more clearly, is that the increase in the average test scores of students in a teacher's class is the result of all relevant educational inputs, not simply what the teacher does. Students differ on many dimensions that affect achievement, such as the education of parents, parent attention and supervision, family wealth, learning opportunities outside of school, student aspirations and attitudes, efforts put into homework, prior achievement levels, use of a home computer, characteristics of peers, availability and use of school resources like libraries and laboratories, class size, school climate, school organization. These factors are likely to affect the increase in student achievement of a teacher's class more than the teacher does. Therefore, it makes no sense to award merit pay based on some simple calculation of the gain in achievement for a teacher's class. To do so is unfair to teachers, since there is no reason to believe that these gain scores reflect just good or poor teaching. To do so is inefficient in that many poor teachers whose classes do better because of other factors will get rewards, and many good teachers whose students improve only a little because of other factors will not. The effort to resuscitate this logic is through statistical analysis. So there's a cottage industry of people doing value-added studies, of saying, okay, I realize that the gain score is not just due to the teacher, it's due to all the factors I just mentioned. So let's control for those factors. The problem is, there are too many factors to control for and you don't know how to control for them. So which factors you put in will affect which teachers you decide are doing above average, but better than predicted. So if I take 3 or 4 factors, or I take 5 or 6 factors, if I put them in linearly, if I put them in interactive form, there's a lot of different ways to control for other variables. And you have no consistency you have no basis for how to control for those other factors. And you have no consistency in the way to treat such factors. So they got statistician named Sanderson, who's been selling school districts these models on how to do value add. And it's a hoax. I mean, I can say that on YouTube, right?
I don't know if anybody in Tennessee can read but hear this enough.
I welcome the lawsuit. To think that you can separate out the effects of the teacher from the dozens, literally dozens of other variables. I'll come to that again in just a second. The idea of rewarding teachers for good teaching is not what's at fault here. The problem is the attempt by proponents of merit pay, performance-based budgets, performance contracting, and OPA in general, to think that this can be done in a mechanical, measurable, narrowly scientific way. A question worth asking is why do those who recommend mechanical merit pay schemes for others not do so for themselves? Why isn't there a push to have merit pay schemes for the legislature? How about, the extent to which, poverty is reduced, education, attendance goes up, dropouts are reduced, even test scores. Why don't we pay legislators for it? Well, they would say, we don't have that much control of the process. You've got some, the teacher has some more, but not at all the type of control you need to allocate test scores to teachers. The last issue I wanted to raise that's related to this is standardized testing. And standardized testing is the educational output for outcome-based education. There's been an overwhelming focus on standardized achievement tests in recent years. This has been disastrous for education in many ways. Achievement tests, no matter how they are designed, are very narrow measures of desired educational outcomes. The emphasis on them has led to teaching directed to the test more strongly than ever before. In the U.S. today, the curriculum has been distorted. Any subject not on the test receives less and less instructional time, like art, music, or physical education. Primary school students often get little or no recreation time. While explicit merit pay may not be present, the pressure on teachers and principals is so strong that sometimes student bathroom breaks are rationed lest they miss something. Students who are sick are kept in class, and many teachers and principals have been caught cheating to raise test scores. The morale of teachers and principals in this situation is lower than ever. The time, effort, and expense in preparing for tests and doing tests are huge. The pressures on students have caused widespread anxiety, mental and behavioral problems. There are many high-pressure examination systems in the world, often in former British colonies. But what is happening now is different. The pressure on teachers and students is every day of every year, not just at the few points when high-stakes tests are given. Moreover, there is no evidence that over a decade of massive effort in this regard in the U.S. Has made any difference in student achievement. No Child Left Behind, a form of outcomes-based education. Tests for outcomes, but doesn't do anything about outcomes. It doesn't do anything to improve outcomes. Or does very little. And we do know what to do. Both in school, we know a lot to improve students' scores, and we know a lot that needs to be done outside of school, before school starts. I recommend Richard Rothstein's book, Class in Education.
Class in Schools.